We have to become the person we are meant to be first, to live the life we are destined to live. We all encounter challenges, obstacles, and even dark times on that journey, but we are not alone. This podcast will give all seekers hope and understanding that others have walked that path before us. My guests will share how they overcame the challenges and what helped them turn the corner. Listening to their inspiring stories, get motivated and take action to transform into that amazing person that you really are. Your voice needs to be heard and your message must be shared. My name is Sabine and I am your host. I am glad that you're here to listen to my podcast where you can discover how to become the more incredible version of yourself. Are you ready? Let's get on this journey together. Now, let's dive into our guest interview. My guest today is entrepreneur Jenny Townsend, who started her self-discovery after her business and marriage was on the brink of failure. Listen to her story and how the adversity she was facing transformed her to become the successful woman she is today. Welcome, Jenny. How are you today?
I'm doing great. I'm so excited to share my story and be here with you.
Before we go into what you do now, I wanted to ask you, your background says you were in sales, marketing, fundraising, real estate, assisting startups. My goodness. So tell us, how did you get started?
Yeah, so my parents were entrepreneurs and they owned a company. They owned a window cleaning company. So I grew up doing customer service and working with my dad to grow that company. And as a child, my parents, we were so busy working and so busy doing all the different businesses, school really wasn't a priority. But I did end up going to college because that's what you were supposed to do. And my parents didn't go to college, so I'm going to college. But I really wasn't ready for college. So I did 2 years and then I got into real estate, which was fantastic from 2003 till about 2007, 8, and the market completely tanked. And I had to go back to school. And because no one would hire me without my bachelor's degree, which I could outsell, outwork, outdo everybody. But unfortunately, you needed that paper with the 4-year degree to say that you completed it. And in today's world, you've got people that are like middle schoolers and high schoolers making $1 million on TikTok and YouTube and, making inventions. So it's interesting how the world has shifted in the last 20 years. So then I went back to college and I got a degree and started working for a microbial company. So I did new business development. I traveled the country, selling a variety of products, went into the bridal industry, and that's where I got into the nonprofit world. I was working for an organization called Brides Against Breast Cancer. We would set up pop-up bridal shows, and all the proceeds would go back to the nonprofit. I then became vice president of business development for the nonprofit. And a year and a half later, I was planning a gala at the Ritz-Carlton, and I had a gala chair tell me I didn't care about the mission of the organization. All I cared about was the money. My job was to fundraise. So she treated me like things on the bottom of your shoe. And I next day basically put in my 3-month exit strategy to start the company that I'm in now.
From a corporate job, starting your own company. And for you, that was the pivotal moment when you were treated like you're not worth anything, right?
I was just brought up to work really hard, and she didn't value that. And that's when it was time to launch my company and really start working for myself.
So, what made you decide to start a music school?
Yeah, so when I was attending college the second time, getting my bachelor's, because I had only had my associates the time before, we had to create a business plan that incorporated all of our classes. So financial, marketing, management, a lot of other classes as well. We had to create a business plan. When the market tanked, I was in the process of short selling my house. So I started working at a restaurant, waiting tables, which I had never done that before. And I was surrounded by musicians. They weren't all professional musicians, but they were people that wanted to get together, jam, connect, and be part of a community. So that's kind of like where the business plan started. Quickly realized musicians don't have much money. They don't they don't want to be working during the hours I want to be working. And I thought back to my childhood. My parents invested a lot of money and energy and time into us. And I felt like, you know what? Kids are the answer. Parents are always going to invest in their children. I switched the business plan up and I'm really thankful I did.
We both know how demanding building a business really is. And you are now in your sixth year. So you got through the first year very successfully and even through the fifth year, because this is really where we can say, now you have a business that works. Because most people, I mean, the majority fail in the first year. And then the ones who are surviving, another 80% fail the following 4 years. So that's kind of the statistics. So you made the statistics, you're being a survivor. But sometimes it means sacrifices. And sometimes it means we forget about either our health, our relationships. And tell me, Jenny, uh, being in that process of building the company, what happened in your life? Did you experience hardships that came along with it?
Yeah, I love the fact that you reference surviving because there's a lot of times that I was like barely hanging on. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to make it. I'm not going to make it. Did I make the wrong decision? When I started my journey, I was happily married. I was happy. I was passionate about what I was doing. And I basically dove 100% in. I took a $120,000 loan. So I knew I had to deliver, had to achieve my dreams. I had to hit my goals, and I had to become profitable as soon as possible. It took several years. The first year, I expanded out of need, which created more debt and more time for me because I had two little locations that I was running, which meant more time from home. I'm in a child-based business, so I am working till 6, 7, 8 o'clock every single night. And when you're newly married, I was married maybe 2 or 3 years, my husband's expecting me to be home. So we never really talked about what's the plan? What is our marriage going to look like? How are we going to stay connected? How are we going to still have that quality time together? So I think that I learned a lot from that first year, but it really didn't hit me until year 3 or 4 when shit hit the fan and my whole entire marriage blew up. So that first 3 years, I didn't pay myself either. And prior to that, I was making some good money. I was contributing to our household and life was great. So anyway, so when I was so committed to my company, I was doing it out of passion and love, and I really was excited about what I was doing. I was naturally high on life, and I just felt like everything was going great. However, I stopped um, being with my family, being with my husband, and music compound became my life every single weekend. So at the end of my first year, I finally got everything under one roof. All my teachers were under one roof. We were rocking, we were rolling. I started hiring more people, and I made a couple bad hires, which resulted in me having to work more hours, more time, and we weren't really making any money, which was stressful for me as I am a goal-oriented person. It was stressful for my husband because he's like, you're working all these hours and you're not paying yourself. And my response to him was, I don't need to be paid. I love what I'm doing. The fact that I get to work my passion every single day and change people's lives was payment enough for me. He never really connected with the mission of my company, which is one of the reasons why we ended up where we were. He always supported me in my dream, but he became very resentful the fact that I wasn't making money and the fact that I was living my dream when he was working a miserable job. So all these different variables led to a massive disaster. At the end of 2017, I met a mentor, and he said, you need to really walk out of your business. I want you to walk out of your business December 1st. It's a 2-week month. If anything happens, you blame it on the holidays. Your team's going to sink or swim. The people that really want to be here are going to come with you in January, and they're going to basically create roles, change roles, and you're going to get a really good glimpse of what's going to happen in the future with your company. And if you don't walk out of your business, it's going to fail. So I decided to walk out of my business. Well, I quickly realized that my husband was not getting home at 5 or 6. He wasn't getting home till 8 or 9, and he's had all these late meetings and all these things going on. And I was like, wait a minute, what's going on here? So I had always speculated that my husband was having an affair, but I was so busy working and I was so high on my own kite that I really just didn't really care at that point. And we weren't really doing well. So I really wasn't putting a lot of time, energy, and focus on it. So I basically take a sabbatical. I noticed that my husband's not getting home. January, I suggested going on a trip. We can't do that. It was a huge fight. And then I was sick at 1 week. And I basically started watching This Is Us, which is another show. And I was like, oh my God, I need to have a baby. Maybe that will fix my marriage. Maybe that will change my life and all these things. So I went to the store, got all the stuff to make dinner, to tell my husband I want to have a baby, and called him. He didn't answer. I went on my phone thing where there's like an app that shows us where we are, which I had never checked before. And I saw that he was in the Brandon Town Center parking lot. And I called. He didn't answer. Emergency. And that's where I discovered that my husband was having an affair with one of his coworkers, a woman that I had met previously 3 years prior at their office. And when I went to his office to see him, she was instantly in his room flirting with him in front of me. And at that point in my life, I should have said, I wanted to say, stay away from my husband. But I didn't want to embarrass him or her. And so February 8th of 2018 will always be in my head. And that was the day that I discovered my husband was having an affair with a coworker.
Wow, that must have been really a step in your heart. Tell us what your thoughts were, what your feelings were, your emotions, and that was a very low point in your life. And how did you get out of there?
Yeah, I mean, like when I think back to it, I left my business because my business was failing, not because my marriage was failing. I didn't know my marriage was failing. And then the reality of it was I became very angry with myself because I knew it was in my gut. Like I knew he was cheating, but I never wanted to make the fights. I never wanted to dig deep. I never wanted to have those hard conversations. And he wasn't happy. He was lonely. My husband, love language is quality time, personal touch. I was not there providing those things. And we never communicated, but there was never time to communicate. I was so, just blinded by everything other than my company. And so when it all happened, obviously I was angry with myself. I was angry with my husband. We decided to separate. We sold our house. And looking back now, wish we would have kept that house. It's what we want to buy right now, and we can't because of the market. So these consequences are still impacting our life. But it was hard. It was really, really hard. And, I was working towards a common goal that I thought that we shared. And I thought that, I told him I need 5 years. Give me 5 years, and I will be able to deliver a good salary. I'll buy you the house on the water. I'll buy you the boat that you want. Give me 5 years to prove it to you. And unfortunately, when you have someone that's going to provide you with that care and that love and be submissive and talk to you and make you feel good, you're going to gravitate that way. And I just treated him like I didn't really care because I didn't really care at that point in my life. But I was hurt, and I did know that I wanted to not lose my husband because I had loved my husband for so long. And I really do feel like we were soulmates. So at that point, it was just, there's so many different emotions. I don't even know if I can explain it. You go from angry to crying. Luckily, I had just hired someone in January to work for my company. And that person, if I would have been in my company full time, that person would not have worked out. So it's really great that I was able to step out of my company. They were able to take my company to the next level. There's a lot of benefits and a lot of really great things that came out of that journey. It's sad. And it's, like I said, it's still part of our life. It will always be part of our life. But it's not my husband's character. My husband is a really great guy. He's really loyal. He's loving. He's committed. I mean, it's definitely not my husband's character. So I was able to find forgiveness through a variety of things that I did along the recovery journey, but it was definitely hard.
Yeah, I can only imagine. One thing that you mentioned is number one, uh, something will always be there, and consequences come out of a situation. And sometimes it can be negative consequences, but I also believe that there are positive consequences coming out of a situation. For example, I mean, you mentioned that you were blinded and you were just so focused on the company. But if this hadn't happened, you probably would have stayed blinded, and who knows what would have come out of it.
Yeah.
My question to you is, and you started mentioning something, because of that, you started to discovering yourself more, and you started a process with started with forgiveness, a process that helped you to become the person that you are today.
Mhm.
And today you are so successful. You started writing a book. You now newly are a podcaster. So I wanted to talk with you about that, definitely. But before we do this, guide us through that transition period that you went through once you realized that it was really you. And I say that also in parenthesis because sometimes um, we tend to think, oh, it was his fault or her fault. But at the end, it's always a mirror on us. So we have to work on ourselves as well. And that's what you started. So share with us how that worked for you, that process of really becoming your greater self.
Yeah. So when we sold our house and we sold it very quickly, and we were still kind of trying to figure out, do we want to make it work? Do we not want to make it work? So we decided to rent a condo downtown. And it was a very small condo, and it was a condo that we could both afford if we decided to split, that one person could cover the rent. And during that time, we didn't have a yard to worry about. We didn't have all of the obstacles to fight about or the chores or things like that. We really could just focus on each other. We did counseling, and we both shared blame in the entire debacle affair. I took a lot of ownership, and I think a lot of people, just want to point the finger, and they're afraid to take ownership or really think back of how did we get here. And my husband and I were able to really just pull back all the layers and get back to the root and say, okay, this is why we fell in love. This is who we are. This is who we were. Like, this is where we grew apart. And we really just discovered, a different side of each other that we were missing and we didn't really know. And we both understood that we had to make ourselves happy first. Like, I had to get back and focus on me. And my parents were entrepreneurs. We worked really, really hard. And so I thought that I've always been told that my value was how hard I worked. And if you didn't work hard, you weren't worth a damn. So I was brought up to always be on the move, always be busy, always have your tasks. What are your goals? What are you doing with your life? And so I had to like strip all of that childhood thought and talk and that whole, you know, everything I've been fed as a kid. And I had to strip that back and then stop and really think, what do I want in my life? What's important to me? What are my goals? Where do I want to be? And who do I want to be? And I rented a house on the beach by myself for 3 or 4 days. And I just went out to the beach and spent time just thinking about what do I want and who do I want to become in the future. And that's where I was a game changer. It was December of 2019. I came home. I told my husband, I love you. I want to be with you. I want to make this work. And I'm going to be 100% committed, and I'm going to forgive you. And this is who I want to be for you. And this is what I need from you. And at that point, we started working together and becoming a team. And we both were able to grow together. And during that journey, I did a lot of acupuncture. I did a lot of sound bowl therapy. I got into the spiritual side of things and understanding how the chakras work. I started doing meditation, which I'm type A personality, always got to be going. I never thought I was going to be able to do meditation, but I started with a 5 minute, YouTube, 5 minute YouTube guided meditation. It told me what to do. It gave me direction. I was able to then work up to 20 minutes. I started stretching, getting up in the morning, being thankful for everything I had. Yeah, my personal life just went to shit, but I've got a really great company. I have a lot of people that work for me, that care for me, that are fantastic. And it's been a journey for the past 2 years. And then then COVID happened, and then I'm stuck home with my husband all the time. And at that point, it's like you have no choice. It's either make or break. So we had some obstacles, but we were able to overcome them because at the end of the day, we remembered who we are as individuals, who he is, who I am. We understood our love. And, a lot of that journey has basically made me who I am today. And I'm so excited of all the projects and where we are. And I would say that I'm grateful for the journey.
That is so great to hear, because I know sometimes we think we are alone and we are the only one who have to go through that process, but we are not. And it's great for listeners to hear too that no matter how dire the situation may appear, if we take the effort and the responsibility to work through it. And I like what you said, renting a house for 3 days and just being for yourself to figure things out, to just take a rest. And sometimes that's the only thing we need, to just be quiet, take a rest, and be on our own. I did that too, not too long ago, actually, because I just needed to have the time for myself to figure things out, because we are always evolving, always going to the next level and doing the next step up. So you went through it, you really went through that metamorphosis a stage, to become that more loving wife and also that more compassionate employer working with your employees. Now through that process, you started writing a book. Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, well, while I was going through all this, there's a lot of rage and there's a lot of anger and there's a lot of feelings. And you don't really want to call all your friends and complain about what just happened and what's going on with their world when they've got like 3 kids. Who knows what's going on with their husband? Their marriage is falling apart too. And it was very lonely because a lot of people don't talk about affairs and people don't talk about the struggles in their own marriages. I did talk about it to several people, and then a lot of people did open up. They'd been through the same challenge. So there were some people that I could connect with. But at the end of the day, I was alone for a lot of it. And so I started journaling. I started writing out all my feelings. I started processing the thoughts and getting it off my chest. I had held in so much of it that I actually got really sick and I got the shingles. So I had shingles all on my neck and my back. I started going to autoimmune doctors. I was taking all different antibiotics. And at one point, I realized it's just my head. Like, you've got to stop holding in all this emotion, all this anger, all these thoughts. You have to release. You have to get it out. And that's where I started doing a journal. And the front of the journal says, take note. And that became my book that I started writing. So it's a passion project of mine. My goal is to, share the journey with other people, because at the end of the day, you could overcome anything that you put your mind to. And life is hard, but if you can focus on the silver lining and the positive things that came out of it, it really will direct you in a new direction. So what was a journal was a book. And it's 30,000 words. It needs to be 60,000 according to my publisher. So what we have decided is to get a podcast and start talking and get some of this information out there and have other guests come on, which I think is really important because I am a leader. I want to mentor people. I always want to, I feel like I'm a solution advisor. I really want to help people. And I always want to be like, you should do this, or you could do this. And did you try this? And everyone's sick of hearing me try to tell them what to do. So the podcast allows me to educate people that want to listen, that are going through the same stage or the same season that I was going through, where they can learn and grow and I can add value and help them.
Your mess became the message that you have now, that you can share with your listeners. So no matter if it's a book, if it's a podcast, there's so many channels that that are available to us right now that we can really share our experiences, and with that helping others discover, oh my gosh, I'm not alone and I can get through, because now you can share all the things that you did that helped you to go through this process, and someone else can now benefit from it and not feeling my life is over, but rather, you know what, there is a way out and I'll try it as
Yeah.
well. So that is really, really powerful. Now, if people want to get in touch with you, well, first of all, tell us your podcast. You're a new podcaster, so what is the name of your podcast?
So my podcast is called Stroke It, and it's all about stroking one's ego. And that would be the stakeholders in your life. And it's yourself, your spouse or your partner, your employees, your employer, your friends, and your family. And the thought process came from actually the fair when my husband had said that he doesn't love her. He didn't cheat on me because he doesn't love me. It's the fact that she made him feel a certain way. And I started thinking about that, and I started thinking about employers that I had and employees as well, where it's like everybody wants to be validated, everyone wants to be heard, everybody wants to do a good job, and they want to have good relationships, but they need that sense of acknowledgement. So the whole stroke it concept is really about, stroking people's egos so that you can bridge the gap between your relationship. So the podcast has just recently launched, so you can find it on all the major podcast outlets. My website is jennyaldaytownsend.com. Allday has one L, and all of my information's on there, and it's available for anybody to download. And I talk a lot about self-care and stroking yourself. A lot of the episodes right now are about stroking yourself because I want people to understand that you have to be happy, you have to be confident, you have to feel good about yourself in order to stroke other people. So you are number one, and it's really, really important that you focus on yourself, make yourself a priority.
Well, thank you so much for being here and doing this interview and sharing your story. That is so empowering. And I wish you all the best for the future.
Thank you.
What an inspiring story. And I really appreciated Jenny to be so open to share it with us, because oftentimes this is a topic that is not spoken about publicly very often. And you may think you're all alone, but no, we are not. And that's why this podcast exists, to really listen to stories and to experiences from other people that they went through, so you know you're not alone and you can learn from others how they overcame adversities. I appreciate you, and if you enjoyed this interview, can you do me a favor and hop over to the platform where you listen to your podcasts and write a quick review? We truly, truly appreciate it.